Something happened to her.
Don't you feel all right?
No, I don't feel all right. None of us feel all right. Can't you see what's going on?
Jim, I don't want anything to happen to you.
Have you ever thought about which Star Trek episodes were so shocking that they were banned in places like Germany and the UK? These stories still cause arguments, even 26 years later. What scenes made censors go crazy? Why do fans still fight about their content today? Star Trek has always pushed the limits of what is socially acceptable and explored new ideas, but some episodes went even further than expected. In this countdown, we talk about 3 Star Trek episodes that pushed the limits of TV, caused a lot of arguments, and made a lasting mark on the history of science fiction. Star Trek Episode 3, Miri. This is the creepiest episode of the show, which first aired in the US on October the 27th, 1996. The crew of the Enterprise had beamed down to a planet that looked just like Earth, but something was very, very wrong. The streets were empty, the buildings were falling apart, and the only people they saw were kids known as the Onlys. These kids had lived for hundreds of years because an experiment to make people live longer had gone horribly wrong. When these kids hit puberty, a deadly virus would change them into violent, ugly adults. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy knew right away that it was dangerous. They had to find a cure while keeping the kids safe. They had to deal with broken cities and gangs of kids that roamed the streets, chanting and making fun of them. The virus not only scared people, but it also turned adults into monsters that attacked people. This made for a tense, edge-of-your-seat situation that combined action, suspense, and moral dilemmas. The episode was very new for its time. Star Trek never shied away from tough questions, and Miri went even further with that. It asked questions about how to stay alive, what is right and wrong, and what happens when science goes too far. How should adults help kids who are in trouble? What did the crew of the Enterprise have to do to help? These were serious issues for a TV show in the 1960s, which is one reason why the episode got so much attention. When the BBC showed Miri for the first time in the UK in December 1970, parents and viewers were shocked. People were upset about how the show showed kids in danger, suggested violence, and how disease could turn adults into monsters. A lot of people thought it was too scary for kids. Because of this, the BBC took the episode off the air and didn't show it again until 1992, more than 20 years later. At the time, reports said that people were scared by the scenes of infected adults attacking like zombies and the fact that the kids couldn't do anything to stop them. Because of the ban, Miri became one of the most talked about Star Trek episodes. Even after all these years, Miri is still sharp. You can watch the episode on streaming services like Paramount Plus in 26, but some areas have content warnings that point out the scary parts. Scenes of sick adults attacking kids are still disturbing, showing that good storytelling can last through the years. What shocked people in 1970 still gives people chills today. After recent global pandemics, the idea of a virus that could hurt people, even kids, hits home in a different way. The episode plays on people's fears of getting sick, being weak, and staying alive. It also makes people wonder if it's right to show kids in danger on screen. How far should TV go when showing kids in dangerous situations? Could the episode have made broadcasters less sure of themselves today? Trekkies still have these kinds of arguments, which shows that Miri isn't just a relic, it's a way to start a conversation. Miri also shows how brave Star Trek was as a show that didn't shy away from hard topics. It was different from a lot of shows from the 1960s because it looked at what happens when scientific experiments go wrong, how fragile human life is, and what moral duties people in power have. It had scary and suspenseful parts, but it also made people think about how society should help people in need. What should grown-ups do when kids are left to take care of themselves? These questions made the story more interesting. It wasn't just a scary episode anymore, it was a lesson in courage, empathy, and morals. The BBC ban also shows how TV and society interacted back then. People's ideas about what is okay for kids to watch have changed over time, but even today, Miri can make people feel uncomfortable. The fact that it still has an effect shows that some fears and moral questions never go away. The episode is a reminder that science fiction can use creative storytelling to talk about real-world problems. Star Trek Episode 2, Plato's Stepchildren. Plato's Stepchildren, the 10th episode of the 3rd season of Star Trek, the original series, is next on our list. It first aired in the US on November 22nd, 1968. The crew of the Enterprise met telekinetic humanoids on the planet Platonius. These humanoids had built a society based on ancient Greece, but it had a dark, sadistic twist. Parmen and the aliens used mind control to make Kirk, Spock, Uhura, and Nurse Chapel do things that were embarrassing. People made characters dance, fight, and even feel pain, like puppets on strings. One of the most famous scenes was when Captain Kirk kissed Uhura. People think this kiss was the first interracial kiss to be shown on American TV. It was a big deal back then. Many people in the US liked the scene, especially during the civil rights movement, but some southern stations were hesitant to show it. The moment meant more to Nichelle Nichols, who played Uhura, than just being on TV. It was a strong statement against racism that showed that Star Trek wasn't just science fiction. It pushed cultural boundaries. But the darker parts of the episode caused problems in other countries. When the BBC showed it in the UK, a lot of people complained. The scenes where telekinetic aliens controlled and tortured characters upset viewers. The BBC banned the episode because of this sadism, and it didn't air in Britain again until 1994. At the time, the torture, humiliation, and forced control of the crew were thought to be too much for families to handle. It became one of the most talked about banned episodes in Star Trek history, not because of the kiss, but because of the pain and cruelty that happened when people were under mind control. Plato's Stepchildren is still available to stream around the world on platforms like Paramount Plus in 2026, with no restrictions. But now that fans watch it, it starts conversations. Some parts of the movie might make viewers uncomfortable in today's world, where movements like #MeToo and more open discussions about consent and power dynamics are happening. The kiss was forced, and the characters had to deal with sadistic control for fun. Would people today think it was a problem? Some teachers are said to skip it in class, which is like a soft ban, even decades later. Plato's Stepchildren is another reminder of the time it was written. In the 1960s, showing an interracial kiss on TV was a big deal, and Star Trek took that chance. At the same time, the story's sadistic parts went too far for family-friendly shows. Because the episode was both socially daring and narratively intense, it was both praised and feared. The characters' struggles with mind control keep us on the edge of our seats, and the Kirk-Uhura kiss has historical significance that reminds us why Star Trek was important for more than just space travel. The BBC ban shows how different cultures and sensitivities affected how people judged content, but modern streaming lets people around the world see it and start new conversations. Star Trek Episode 1, High Ground. The High Ground, the 12th episode of the 3rd season of Star Trek, The Next Generation, is the most controversial episode. It first aired in the US on January 29th, 1990. The Enterprise went to Rutia 4, a planet that was in the middle of a civil war. Separatists took Dr. Crusher hostage, which led to a tense moral debate about terrorism, violence, and ethics for Captain Picard. Data casually brought up historical examples of violence that worked, like the Irish unification of 2024. That one line started a lot of real-life arguments and conversations right away. Because of the Troubles, the episode was not shown in the UK and Ireland. The BBC didn't show it until September 29, 2007, 17 years later, and even then only once without editing. During the 1990s, Ireland's national broadcaster, RTE, didn't show it at all because they were afraid it would glorify terrorism during the height of IRA bombings. Sky Television showed a shorter version in 1992 that cut out any mention of Ireland to keep things from getting worse. The argument is more than just about the past. The writers made people think critically about the morality of rebellion and the effects of violence by setting the story in the near future and linking it to real-world political situations. The US audience mostly thought about the moral issues, while the UK and Irish audiences were worried about how terrorism was shown and what it could mean for current conflicts. The episode still has meaning and is talked about today. In 2026, streaming services made it fully available, but there are still questions. If similar politically charged content were made today, would it face the same backlash? The moral conflict in The High Ground is what makes it so important even today. Picard has to figure out how to deal with violent separatists while keeping his crew safe. He weighs the need to stop damage against the philosophical question of whether violence can ever be justified to achieve political goals. The story makes people think about hard questions like when violence is okay, if ever, and how leaders should act morally when they're under stress. These questions are still relevant, showing that Star Trek is still committed to using science fiction to look at human problems. Fans and critics have thought about why the episode made people feel so strongly over the years. The fact that it was shown during ongoing conflicts and talked about future political events made it tense in a way that is unique. This shows how the context of a broadcast can affect how people react. It also shows how brave Star Trek is for dealing with controversial issues without making complicated moral questions easier to understand. Data's line, which seemed casual at first, became a hot topic of debate about narrative responsibility and the power of prediction in storytelling. The episode also shows how science fiction can be a mirror for society, making people think about real-world problems in a made-up world. The writers made a story that went beyond its fictional world and spoke to real-world issues by looking at terrorism, hostage situations, and the morality of rebellion. In this way, The High Ground is more than just a movie. It makes you think more deeply about morality, politics, and the effects of people's choices. Lastly, The High Ground helps us understand the bigger picture of Star Trek's effects and problems. This episode was about terrorism, moral dilemmas, and political foresight, but the franchise has other stories that are just as interesting and have caused debate and censorship. Star Trek always used its universe to talk about social, moral, and political issues, from TOS's portrayal of Nazi ideology to TNG's graphic science fiction elements. As we move on to the next chapter, we'll see how other banned episodes kept pushing the limits, showing how Roddenberry's vision has had a lasting effect on culture. The story doesn't end here. These controversies show how Star Trek has always been both daring and thoughtful, pushing the limits of what TV can talk about while also changing the way people talk about it, other controversies, and Star Trek's lasting impact. Conspiracy, an episode of The Next Generation that aired during the show's first season, is another striking example. In this story, officers from Starfleet find out about a secret plan involving parasitic aliens that take over people's heads and cause graphic explosions. Because of the extreme violence, the episode was banned in the UK and didn't air in full until 2007. These episodes show how Star Trek often walked the line between telling stories that were creative and not being able to show things that were real. They show that the franchise cares about social commentary by looking at issues like racism, authoritarianism, mental health, and moral dilemmas. Roddenberry's vision wasn't just about going to strange new places, it was also about showing how people live and the problems they face. Star Trek has had an effect on technology, leading to the creation of devices that look like today's flip phones and tablets. It encouraged diversity long before most TV shows did. The crew was made up of people of different races, genders, and species who worked together as equals and treated each other with respect. Star Trek won many Emmy and Hugo Awards for these contributions, which solidified its status as a groundbreaking and culturally important franchise. But the bans also show how cultural differences affect how people react to media. In the UK, family slot programming rules made broadcasters careful about showing episodes with graphic violence, disturbing images, or political commentary that could upset people. American networks, on the other hand, often liked the franchise's bold choices, which let difficult content reach audiences without the same limits. This difference between how careful the UK is and how brave the US is shows how a single series can get very different reactions around the world. Star Trek's controversies have also sparked conversations among fans and academics. For example, Patterns of Force makes us think about how historical atrocities are shown in fiction and what storytellers should do. Conspiracy also makes people think about how violence is shown and how it affects people who watch it. Star Trek makes people think critically, look at ethics, and think about how these stories affect society as a whole. The franchise's effects will last long after the show is over. Its creative ideas have inspired generations of scientists, engineers, and artists, affecting everything from robotics to space travel. People still connect with the social messages in Star Trek, which stress working together, understanding others, and making moral decisions. Even episodes that are controversial add to this legacy by starting conversations about censorship, cultural sensitivity, and the role of entertainment in showing real-world problems. These episodes that were banned or caused a lot of controversy show us that Star Trek was never happy to stay in safe storytelling areas. The show used futuristic settings to deal with modern issues, question social norms, and look at hard moral questions. These stories pushed the limits, from Nazi symbols to graphic alien violence, and made people think and talk about them long after they were made. It's the year 2006, and these controversial Star Trek episodes are now available for free on major streaming services. However, their legacy and impact are still felt. Before airing episodes like Miri and Plato's Stepchildren, platforms like Netflix, Paramount Plus, and Amazon Prime often include warnings that certain themes, violence, or sensitive material might still upset some viewers. These warnings show that people are still being careful. Even though censorship may not be as direct, people are still very worried about how the audience will react. For example, Plato's Stepchildren. In 1968, Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura shared the first interracial kiss on American television. In today's world, where people are more aware of consent, power dynamics, and social justice, fan forums and cultural commentators wonder if this moment would be seen as progressive, a historic milestone, or problematic because the kiss was forced in the story. Some people say that it is a brave statement against racism and the way things were done in the 1960s, while others wonder if modern audiences might see it differently, especially in classrooms or public discussions. Miri also makes people think, especially now that the pandemic is over. The idea of a virus turning adults into dangerous creatures and leaving only children alive is similar to how people today worry about disease and child safety. While streaming lets people watch, some conservative or sensitive areas may still flag it for educational or family viewing. The episode makes people talk about how the media talks about diseases and what that might mean for younger viewers. There are still a lot of rumors going around in fan communities, online forums, and social media about edited versions, skipped scenes, and region-specific restrictions. Direct bans are mostly a thing of the past, but content changes or warnings are a modern way to be careful. It is something that both fans and casual viewers can talk about and gossip about. The debate brings up bigger questions. Does censorship change as society does? Or do streaming algorithms and content labels just hide controversial content behind digital walls? Having them on streaming services gets a new group of viewers to think about the same moral and social issues that have caused arguments in the past. The episodes are no longer banned in the usual way, but the way they are framed, the warnings, and the ongoing discussion show how cultural sensitivity still affects how people watch TV and movies today. Which of these banned Star Trek episodes shocked you the most? If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more hidden stories from TV history. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's discuss.